The war room stank of failure. Holographic stars floated above the obsidian table, each system marked in shifting lights. Red bled outward like a spreading wound, the Vorkan advance. Green, the color of the hegemony, had dwindled to a few fragile pockets. Around the chamber, alien dignitaries hunched in silence, their bodies sagging beneath ceremonial armor that looked ridiculous against the certainty of defeat. The eldest among them, High Consul Varith of the Cerati, lifted his feathered head. 7 systems in 2 weeks? He rasped. His wings twitched, brittle with age. Entire populations gone. If this continues, we must sue for peace. Peace? Snarled Admiral Trell, scales rippling down his reptilian neck. You mean surrender? There is no treaty with butchers. The Vorkan enslave or they devour. The chamber erupted in bickering. Some demanded a retreat to core worlds. Others insisted the Dominion could be bargained with if tribute were offered. Words circled like carrion birds, heavy with desperation. The door hissed open. A human walked in. His uniform was unadorned, its edges singed from the last skirmish. He carried himself like a blade unsheathed, rigid, unflinching. His eyes scanned the council as though measuring the room for weaknesses. Commander Elias Vayer. You've tried mercy, he said without greeting. His voice carried the clipped precision of someone accustomed to command. You've tried honor. You've tried hope. How much territory did that buy you? Gasps rippled through the council. Few aliens had grown used to the bluntness of humans. You overstepped, Commander. Varith bristled, feathers puffing. Your species was invited here to observe, not dictate. Elias stepped closer to the star map. His hand passed through a glowing sphere, scattering light across his face. Observe? While you cling to rituals and treaties, the Vorkan have turned war into extinction. They will not stop. You know this. But you've never fought an enemy that doesn't share your rules. Admiral Trell's eyes narrowed. And you claim humans have? Elias met his stare without flinching. We perfected survival while tearing ourselves apart. We learned to fight wars that never ended, against enemies who showed no mercy. You call it barbarism. We call it history. A silence settled. For the first time, the council seemed to listen. Elias touched the star map, highlighting the planet Korath. A fertile colony, its agricultural exports fed 3 nearby systems. This is your next target. The Vorkan will strike here within days. Varith ruffled his feathers. Then we must prepare its defenses. No. Elias's voice was steel. We strip it bare. Evacuate civilians. Burn the fields. Leave nothing for the enemy but ash. Outrage crackled. A crystalline envoy of the Azari vibrated sharply, her voice resonating like shattering glass. Destroy our own colony? Unthinkable. Elias didn't flinch. Unthinkable is watching those same crops feed the armies that enslave your children. The Vorkan survive on what they seize. Deny them that. Starve them. Make every victory cost them more than they can bear. Trell's tail lashed. You would scorch worlds to win? I would scorch every world between here and the core if it meant survival, Elias said. His tone didn't rise, but it carried weight enough to silence the room. Varys studied him, feathers slowly settling. You believe you can defeat them? Elias's gaze swept the table. Defeat? No. Not today. Today we teach them to bleed. Tomorrow, we make them fear us. The council reluctantly yielded him a fleet, a patchwork of alien ships with a single human destroyer at its heart. The crews eyed one another with suspicion, but Elias wasted no time. Orders flowed with ruthless precision. Civilians were evacuated from Korath. Silos and warehouses were rigged with incendiaries. From orbit, satellites were repositioned not for defense, but as bait. When the Vorkan came, they came hungry. The swarm fell upon Korath in black waves, chittering warships descending like locusts. They found empty fields, burning silos, satellites flashing false transmissions. Their scouts pressed forward, straight into the kill zone. From the asteroid belt, Elias's fleet emerged. The battle was swift and vicious. Alien commanders balked at the ambush, but Elias drove them forward with calculated fury. Human drones swarmed the Vorkan engines. Rail cannons tore through carapace armor. When Vorkan reinforcements closed, Elias sacrificed 2 frigates to trigger a chain reaction in the belt, hurling asteroids into their formation. The swarm broke apart, hundreds of their ships reduced to drifting wrecks. On the command deck, an alien officer stared at the burning field of debris, voice trembling. You use your own ships as lures." Elias's jaw tightened. "Better a ship than a civilization." The fleet returned to Karhos battered but alive. Word spread faster than the ships themselves. The humans had turned the Vorkan back. But celebration never touched Elias's face. He stood at the viewport of his destroyer, watching the wreckage drift through starlight. "This is just the beginning," he murmured to himself. "If we are to survive, we must become monsters greater than them." The first victory tasted like ash. News of the ambush spread across the hegemony with the speed of desperation. Colonies that had begun preparing surrender rituals suddenly whispered of survival. Yet within the council chambers, suspicion festered. For every voice praising the humans, 2 more muttered that the methods were obscene. Commander Elias Veyer ignored the politics. On his flagship, he pored over data streams, supply routes, enemy patrols, whispers from resistance cells on occupied worlds. He wasn't chasing applause. He was building a pattern. Scene 1: Ruthless Methods. His plan unfolded in shadows. Small strike teams were deployed to worlds under Vorkan control, not to free them but to poison water supplies, collapse mines, and cripple foundries. Sleeper agents broadcast false orders across Vorkan comm channels, forcing ships into ambushes. From orbit, Elias had entire asteroids rigged as kinetic weapons, pushing them into carefully calculated trajectories. Every move bought time. But unease grew. On the bridge of the Cerati cruiser Shining Wing, Admiral Trell confronted him, scales shifting with agitation. "You turn soldiers into saboteurs, colonies into battlefields, civilians into pawns," Trell snapped. "Is this what your kind calls victory?" Elias didn't look up from the star map. "It's what we call survival." Trell's voice deepened, almost a growl. "There is no honor in burning crops or poisoning wells." Elias finally met his gaze, eyes cold. "Where was your honor when the Vorkan enslaved Cerati hatchlings and marched them in chains across their decks? Did honor save them?" The silence after that was heavier than any argument. Scene 2: Seeds of Fear. The Vorkan, once relentless in their assaults, began to hesitate. Reports trickled in of crews refusing to land on abandoned colonies, fearing traps. Some ships abandoned raids mid-attack after receiving false orders of encirclement. Rumors spread among their ranks. Humans fought like predators, invisible, striking where least expected. Arch-warlord Karzul sat upon his throne of bone and iron when the reports reached him. The great insected warlord's mandibles clicked in irritation. "The mammals?" he hissed, voice like grinding stone. "You tell me the hegemony hides behind primitives?" The Vorkan officer bowed low, chitin scraping the floor. "Not primitives, Lord. They think without restraint. They burn their own worlds to deny us prey." Karzul's laughter rattled the chamber. "Then they are fools. A beast that destroys its own nest cannot survive long." His tone hardened. "Prepare the bait. Let us see how long these mammals resist when we dangle flesh before their eyes." Scene 3: The Trap. Days later, a desperate signal pierced the void. A colony world, Velis Prime, was under siege. Millions of civilians still on its surface, begging for rescue. The council reeled. To lose another world so soon after their first taste of hope could collapse morale entirely. Admiral Trell stormed into Elias's command room. "You cannot ignore this! If Velis falls, the hegemony may tear itself apart." Elias studied the transmission with cold detachment. The images of burning cities, shrieking civilians, Vorkan war forms towering over the dying. It was a performance, too clean to be real. "It's bait," he said flatly. "Even if it is, can you stand idle while millions scream for aid?" Elias's voice hardened. Yes, if it means ending this war sooner. A colony is not worth the entire fleet. The room chilled. Even his human officers shifted uncomfortably. But Elias had already calculated the odds. The Vorkan wanted him to commit everything, to rush headlong into slaughter. Instead, he would turn their trap against them. Scene 4: Counterstrike. He planted false intelligence within captured Vorkan channels, reports that a massive relief fleet was gathering near Velis Prime. At the same time, he arranged decoy transmissions suggesting sabotage in the nearby asteroid field. Karzel took the bait. When the Vorkan armada moved to crush the relief fleet, Elias was waiting. Hidden ships flared to life from the asteroid shadows, drones ignited into swarms, railguns fired in coordinated arcs. The Vorkan advance ships plowed straight into mine-laced debris. For hours, the void was fire and steel. Elias directed the battle like a surgeon, sacrificing ships to collapse formations, driving enemy squadrons into kill zones, unleashing jamming signals that turned their calms into chaos. On the enemy flagship, Karzel raged. His claws tore grooves into the throne's arms. He opened a direct channel, his colossal face filling Elias's screen. "Mammal," he hissed, mandibles dripping. "You fight like vermin, gnawing in the dark. Do you believe you can break the Dominion with cowards' tricks?" Elias's expression never shifted. "Tricks? No. Just history. You think you are predators, Karzel? Humanity learned to survive worse monsters than you. And we killed them all." Karzel's laughter rattled the speakers. "Then I will enjoy breaking you myself." Scene 5: Blood Price. The battle turned costly. The Vorkan unleashed waves of suicide craft, detonating among the Allied fleet. Ships died by the dozen. Elias ordered countermeasures without hesitation, even detonating a crippled cruiser within enemy lines, vaporizing friend and foe alike. Admiral Trellis' voice shook as he watched. "You sacrificed them. They died so that 10 times their number could live," Elias answered. His tone carried no apology. The trap ended with the Vorkan retreating, crippled but not destroyed. Karzel's flagship limped into the void, its commander snarling oaths of vengeance. Elias stood on his command deck, face pale under the harsh lights. The cost weighed heavy, but he locked it away. His officers looked at him not with admiration, but with something else: fear. Closing beat. That night, alone in his quarters, Elias allowed himself a moment of weakness. He stared at the star map, at the red lines that seemed endless, and whispered, "We are buying time with blood. Every victory makes us stronger. Every horror steals us further. But how much more must we become before we win?" The galaxy outside glittered in silence, indifferent to his question. The warning came at dawn cycle. Carriers and scouts along the frontier went silent in quick succession, vanishing under a tide of interference. When the jamming cleared, the truth emerged. Arch-warlord Karzel himself was driving a massive fleet straight toward Karhoz 4. If Karhoz fell, the hegemony would collapse. The council chamber dissolved into panic. One delegate wept openly, feathers trembling. Another shouted for immediate surrender. The air stank of fear. Commander Elias Veyer stood apart from their chaos, watching the star map bleed red. He let the shouting burn itself out before he spoke. "You want to surrender?" His voice cut through the noise. "Then hand over your signatures and bow before your slavers. But if you want to live, give me command. Not a token fleet. Everything." "Everything?" gasped Consul Veyrith. "Yes. Ships, guns, stations, drones. Or you'll have nothing left to protect." Admiral Trell leaned forward, voice low. "And if you fail?" Elias met his gaze. "Then we die fighting. Better than living on our knees." Silence settled, heavy as stone. One by one, the counselors gave their assent. Scene 1: Preparing the trap. The void above Karhoz 4 became a forge. Elias ordered stations stripped and rebuilt into floating bombs, railguns sunk into the planet's crust, drones loaded with antimatter. Mines were seated in orbits, disguised as debris. Even the planetary shields were deliberately weakened in patches, bait for the Dominion's arrogance. His officers worked with grim determination, though some whispered about the cost. "You're turning the planet itself into a weapon," one muttered. Elias's reply was cold. "Better a weapon than a tomb." Scene 2: The Battle of Carthos. The Dominion arrived like a storm. Thousands of black ships poured from the void, their hulls glistening with organic sheen. At their center loomed Karzul's flagship, a monstrous fortress bristling with claws and spines. "Forward!" Karzul commanded, mandibles twitching in hunger. "Break them, burn them, feast upon their screams." The Vorkan charged. From Carthos, the human-led fleet rose to meet them. Railguns thundered, drones erupted in swarms, orbital mines ignited like a second sun. The void filled with fire and steel. Elias directed the battle with ruthless precision. "Push the left flank into Sector 5. Detonate Grid 9. Sacrifice the vanguard, block their carrier advance." Explosions bloomed. The vanguard died in silence, its sacrifice collapsing the enemy's formation. For every Allied loss, 10 Vorkan ships burned. But still they came. Scene 3: Duel of Wills. Karzul's voice cut through the comms, broadcasts wide. His monstrous face filled Elias's screens. "Mammal," he hissed, eyes glinting. "You bleed ships like cattle. Do you think this desperation makes you strong?" Elias stood tall on his command deck. "You mistake desperation for resolve. We don't fight to conquer. We fight because there is no other choice." Karzul's mandibles clicked in cruel amusement. "Then you are nothing but beasts." Elias's voice hardened. "Beasts survive. Empires rot." The duel was not of blades but of will, each word broadcast to every ship on both sides. To the Vorkan, it was alien defiance. To the hegemony, it was fire rekindled. Scene 4: The Sacrifice. The tide shifted. Despite heavy losses, the Dominion pressed closer, their flagship breaking through the defensive line. Carthos trembled under orbital bombardment. Elias saw the inevitable. Standard tactics would not hold. Only one gambit remained. He turned to his officers. "Prepare Station Omega for detonation." The bridge fell silent. Omega was a massive orbital habitat, still packed with thousands of wounded and support staff. "Sir," whispered a human lieutenant, "there are civilians aboard." Elias's jaw tightened. "If Omega survives, Carthos falls. If Carthos falls, billions die. There's no choice." Admiral Trell's voice shook. "You would murder your own." "I would sacrifice the few to save the many," Elias answered, each word iron. "That's what it means to command." No one argued further. Scene 5: End of Karzul. The flagship of Karzul closed in, preparing its final strike. Elias gave the order. Station Omega's core ignited in a blinding flash. The shockwave ripped through the void, consuming the Vorkan vanguard, tearing Karzul's flagship in half. The arch-warlord's last scream carried across comms, a sound of rage cut short by fire. Silence followed. The Dominion fleet fractured. Leaderless, terrified by the scale of sacrifice they had just witnessed, they fled into the dark. Scene 6: Aftermath. The battle was won. But the price hung heavy. The skies above Carthos were littered with wreckage and drifting bodies. In the council chamber, survivors praised the humans as saviors, though their eyes betrayed unease. One delegate whispered, "They are more frightening than the Vorkan." Elias stood apart, staring at the star map. The red advance had halted. For now. Admiral Trell approached quietly. "You've changed us. None of us will ever fight the same again." Elias's reply was quiet, almost weary. "We didn't win because we were better. We won because we were willing to go further than anyone else." He looked once more at the stars, a shadow across his face. "But what have we become in the process?" No one answered. The silence of the galaxy pressed in, vast and indifferent. Closing note. Rumors spread faster than ships. Stories of the humans, their cold resolve, their terrifying sacrifices, their refusal to bow, echoed across the stars. Whispered in fear, repeated in awe. When the war was lost, humanity taught the galaxy how to survive. Word count 1001.